a week from today. Earth Day, which has been celebrated annually since 1970, is the day designated for fostering appreciation of the Earth's environment and for raising awareness of the issues that threaten it. We wanted to hold this event to make you aware of the city's efforts and investments being made to address these issues within the city, and most importantly, how you as business owners can take advantage of the resulting business opportunities. Today, you'll hear about city policies and regulations that address green infrastructure and energy efficiency, some related upcoming city agency project work, and resources to help you prepare to take on this project work, should you choose to do so. This green work is potentially a huge area of opportunity for small and MWBE businesses, and we really hope that the information shared today will get you excited to prepare your companies to take advantage of the short-term and long-term opportunities coming up. And when I say long-term, we are talking about decades worth of work that will be needed to get New York City up to green code. This event serves as just the start of the conversation, folks, and we as city representatives are here to help inform you, to help you equip yourselves and your businesses to get a piece of these future areas of opportunity. But before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping rules. Although we're muting everyone upon entry, please make sure that you stay muted during the presentation so to avoid the background noise. Also, again, if you have any questions during the various presentations, please type them into the chat feature, which can be found in the lower right-hand corner of the WebEx screen. We want to make sure we have enough time to cover all the important information, so we'll try to address as many questions. During the presentations, we have a couple of SBS staffers looking at that chat box and monitoring it and hopefully answering some of the questions, as well as some of the agency folks who will also try to answer applicable questions. Okay, so let's get going. Next slide, please. So scheduled to speak today are the Mayor's Office of Sustainability, who will cover the city's green policies and regulations and future investments, followed by 3 city agencies, HPD, DEP, and Parks, and the New York City Housing Authority, also known as NYCHA, who will present on upcoming green project work. Then to close out our event will be NYSERDA and SBS to fill you in on the available resources that can help you prepare to pursue the upcoming city project work. Next slide. To open our discussion, I'd like to introduce Ellie Kahn, who's a Senior Policy Advisor from the New York City Mayor's Office of Sustainability. Ellie, please unmute yourself and proceed.
Great. Thanks for the introduction, Ophelia. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. As Ophelia mentioned, my name is Ellie Kahn from the Mayor's Office of Sustainability. And if you don't mind advancing to the next slide. I'm going to discuss a little bit about sort of why do we care about green infrastructure and green and clean energy. And also how some of the ambitious goals that we have to be able to make a cleaner, greener city. Then we have some policy drivers that we are using to be able to get there. And I'll describe some programs that you can use to be able to plug in to some of these initiatives. And next slide. So I might be preaching to the choir here. I see in the chat that a lot of people are already in the sustainability space, so bear with me. One of the main reasons for green infrastructure, and by no means the only reason, but one of the main reasons is climate resiliency. Next slide. Climate resiliency is something that's very important in New York City. I think we've all probably experienced some climate-related issues. One of the ones that green infrastructure can address is coastal flooding. You have here actually tidal flooding. This is not a storm in this picture. It's just a high tide, and as the sea levels rise, those high tides get higher. And coastal flooding can help protect our shoreline from rising sea levels. Next slide. Green infrastructure is also helpful in managing more intense storms that are likely to increase as a result of climate change. You have here a snowstorm, but I think we've all, have Sandy in mind when we think about the more intense storms that are coming our way. Green infrastructure captures water and prevents it from, say, flooding your basement or mixing in with our sewer system, which then gets unfortunately dumped in surrounding waterways. I believe DEP will describe that in more detail, but green infrastructure is really helpful for preventing flooding from major events like Sandy, but even just more increasingly intense rainstorms and things like that. Next slide. Green infrastructure is also really helpful in addressing extreme heat, and with global warming, that extreme heat is only going to get more extreme and more frequent. Unlike green heat, actually is the leading source of climate-related deaths, both in New York City and nationwide, and that's year over year. More people are dying from heat than from any kind of other kind of natural disaster. Um, this is a major issue in New York City, and especially with the fact that our roofs are, there's black tar on our roofs, there's dark pavement and things like that. That really absorbs a lot of heat from the sun and captures it so that even at nighttime it doesn't really cool off. To the point where New York City can be 22 degrees warmer in the evening than the surrounding areas just because there's not enough green stuff. As you can see here, though, Central Park is an amazing piece of green infrastructure. It's much cooler than the surrounding areas, and it's simply because there are plants there. Next slide. You may all be familiar with why we care about clean energy, but I'll just touch on some of the reasons that New York City is looking at this and some of the goals that we have. The main reasons are carbon emissions reductions and improving our air quality. Next slide, please. The city has two major goals. One is that we want to have the cleanest air of any major city in the US. And the other major goal is carbon neutrality by 2050. So that means that we do not want to be emitting emitting greenhouse gas emissions on a net basis by 2050. To get there, we have set a goal of 100% clean electricity by 2040. And in support of that goal, we have a goal of 1,000 megawatts of solar by 2030 and 500 megawatts of storage by 2025. We have transportation goals as well, shifting away from personal vehicles and fossil fuel powered personal vehicles to electric vehicles and other ways of getting around, whether that's public transportation, walking, sort of new types of mobility and things like that. This is all in line with the Paris Climate Agreement, which is an international agreement to keep global warming to under 1.5 degrees Celsius. Next step. Next slide. You might be wondering where greenhouse gas emissions come from, and in most places, that answer would be transportation. But that's not true in New York. Transportation is very important, and it's something that we are addressing, as well as waste, which releases methane at landfill. But I will primarily focus on buildings in this presentation because they are comprise 2/3 of our greenhouse gas emissions. And then within that 67% that is from our buildings, about 40% of that is coming from our electricity usage.
Yeah, I saw it and I sent it back. Great, yeah.
So
So you'll probably see
2/3 of that is coming from fossil fuel powered power plants. So that's a lot of natural gas powered plants is fueling our electricity. So we need to be able to get more renewables into that grid. We also have a quarter of our total emissions is from gas and oil usage from directly burning fossil fuels within our buildings. That's typically used for space heating, water heating, and things like that. And we will need to be getting away from those modes of heating. The remainder is for the Con Ed steam network as well, which is a small piece. Next slide. So clearly we have a long way to go. We still have a lot of emissions to reduce and a lot of infrastructure to make green. The city and the state, luckily, have made really ambitious policy goals that are pretty binding. There's not a lot of wiggle room in them, which will help us get on the way to some of the really ambitious targets that we've set out for ourselves. It will also result in quite a lot of investment in the built environment. to be able to deliver. Do you mind moving to the next slide? So before I get into the specific policies, I want to discuss a few trends that we're seeing. The first is efficiency and waste reduction is always the best option. That kilowatt hour of energy that you don't use is much better than creating sort of new clean kilowatt hours. Although, of course, we need to do both. Efficiency should be sort of step one. Similarly, we should be designing for waste reduction. So design products, design services to be able to minimize the end waste, the waste at the end of that process. That way you don't have to dispose of anything. It's better to prevent that waste from existing than to manage the waste after it's done. The next main trend is related. In order to do that sort of efficiency and waste reduction design, we have to have a more holistic view of a system. So for a building, that means thinking about how the HVAC system is interacting with the building envelope and so on and so forth, and how the building envelope and the roofing are connected and things like that. That also ties into the idea of moving away from prescriptive measures. We're moving away from checklists. We found that they are not necessarily delivering in the same way that we would like. And there will still be a role for LEED standards and things like that. But we are moving towards more performance-based measurements to make sure that we're not just thinking, all right, it's designed to code, it meets all the checklists, but rather, how is it actually performing in real life? What is actually happening? How much energy is it using, etc. And the last one is electrification, which if you could advance the next slide. This is a big one. We know we need to get off of fossil fuels, and one of the best ways to do that today is through electrification. I'm sure you've all heard about electrification of vehicles. There's going to be a lot of work in manufacturing and maintaining electric vehicles, as well as constructing electric vehicle charging infrastructure. We need to get off of burning gas in our homes. So thinking about cooking, yes, cooking, that we are burning fossil fuels directly in our own apartments and homes. Importantly, heating as well is a major way that we use natural gas and oil in our buildings, and we may need to electrify a lot of our heating and hot water through things like air source heat pumps. This policy is not exactly in place yet, but both the city and the state have been discussing whether to ban natural gas from new construction or new hookups in the near future, within the next decade. So at some point, natural gas connections will not be a given. You may have to do electric, and we'll have to know how to make that happen. Next slide. So that was sort of looking into the future. What we have today is the Climate Mobilization Act of 2019. These were a set of laws passed by New York City Council that really re-envision what a building is and how it contributes or hurts our greenhouse gas emissions reduction goals. I will discuss local laws 92 and 94 and 97 in greater detail, but to pause here on local laws 95 and 96, these two laws really help support the implementation of the other two laws. Building energy efficiency grades are really a communication tool to be able to help building owners and tenants understand whether a building is operating efficiently or not. And then local law 96, which established a clean energy loan program, can help finance a lot of the work that is required under local law 92 and 94 through property tax assessments. Next slide, please. So local law 92 and 94 require that all new buildings and major roof renovations are equipped with solar and or a green roof. You have to completely cover the roof. You can't just put something in the corner and be done with it. You have to cover the roof. The idea behind these laws is to make sure that roofs are used effectively, that you're not just sort of letting it sit there and contribute to, the heat that we saw earlier or the stormwater runoff that we saw earlier, but are contributing, they're solutions rather than problems. It doesn't preclude things like recreational space. Those things are definitely allowed. The goal is really just to make sure that that roof is being put to some kind of productive use. Solar where feasible for affordable housing means that basically, so affordable housing doesn't have to do green roofs, but there are certain criteria under which solar is required on new construction. And local laws 92 and 94 support local law 97, which I'll discuss next, as well as DEP's stormwater rules. DEP issued more stringent rules very recently that require a lot of capture and management of stormwater on site for large projects, and green roofs are an excellent way to be able to do that. Next slide, please. Local Law 97 was the cornerstone of the New York City Climate Mobilization Act. You may hear it called Carbon Budget Bill, Retrofit Bill. There's a few other names for it. But basically what it does is it requires large buildings or buildings over 25,000 square feet to meet an emissions target. That emissions target is based on how many on the square footage of the property as well as what it's used for. So industrial properties obviously have slightly different needs than residential properties. Unlike Local Law 92 and 94, which is a new construction requirement, this applies to all existing buildings, which is why it's often called the retrofit bill. Again, this is not about design standards. It's not saying you have to create your building to meet a certain checklist or anything like that. It's really about actual energy usage. How much natural gas are you burning? How much electricity are you using, etc. This law has major teeth. The non-compliant buildings will face fines, and those fines are levied not once, but on an annual basis. So if you are not meeting your budget, your carbon budget, you are going to incur fines year after year after year. Next slide, please. One thing that's a bit tricky in terms of figuring out where the work will be coming from Local Law 97 is that there's no specific set of technologies or interventions that buildings need to do to be able to comply. They can figure out what makes the most sense for them, whether that's an HVAC upgrade, envelope work, renewable energy on the roof, or some combination of those things. But it does mean that in general, contractors will have to be working in tandem together a bit more closely to understand how systems interact, and it requires a better understanding of how energy works in a building. These laws get more stringent over time, so the target, your budget keeps decreasing of how much carbon you're allowed to use. By 2024, about 20% of these large buildings will need to reduce their emissions. By 2030, about 80% of these buildings will have to make some kind of energy conservation measures. Affordable housing, again, has a slightly different compliance pathway. There's a list of low-cost energy measures that affordable housing will have to do to comply with Local Law 97. Next slide. Next slide, please. Great. The city is not exempt from this. Sorry, go back. I think there's a slight delay on my side. Thank you. The city is not exempt. In fact, the city's goals are more stringent than those of the private sector. We're not only focusing on buildings, but operations, including our vehicles and waste. And so we need to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions 40% by 2025 and 50% by 2030. And NYCHA as well is reducing 40% by 2030. Sorry, next slide. At the state level, soon after the passage of the New York City Climate Mobilization Act, the state assembly and legislature passed the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. It's similarly ambitious. It requires net zero emissions economy-wide by 2050, and it says that 35% or more of the benefits must accrue to disadvantaged communities. And surprise, surprise, most of those disadvantaged communities are in New York City. That means a lot of that state funding is going to have to come down here and be spent on projects that benefit us. There are other goals here. We know that we're going to have to invest heavily in solar. Offshore wind in particular will be connecting into New York City and other clean energy projects. Next slide, please. I'll describe some programs that we have that you can use to connect in and be able to access some of the business that's going to result from these laws. Next slide. The New York City Accelerator program is run by my office, and it is a program to help building owners comply with all of these laws and go above and beyond as well. In addition to helping building owners, we know that we need to support contractors in being able to deliver. So we offer free trainings and workshops for contractors and building owners. We offer pre-qualified contractor lists. We don't have any open right now, but if you are interested in becoming a pre-qualified contractor with the Accelerator, please send an email to info@accelerator.nyc or follow Accelerator on LinkedIn. You can find that LinkedIn link through the nyc.gov/accelerator. On that website as well are some resources that may be very useful, such as case studies and sell sheets. And we also have an internship program where we can provide you with trained students who focus on STEM fields within the CUNY system, and we provide training on building science and energy efficiency. Next slide, please. We run another program that's brand new. You're the first to hear about it, actually. It's official next week. Basically, we know that we need to get off of natural gas, so we're running a pilot program to help electrify heating and cooling within 1 to 4 family homes in Staten Island. It's going to be very contractor driven. We will be generating, through an outreach campaign, we'll be generating leads and referrals for contractors that participate with us. We will be providing no and low cost manufacturer trainings, and those manufacturer trainings are actually required to be able to access some of the state and utility incentives. This is brand new. We invite you to join the virtual trade show that we're hosting. There's no charge to attend, and there's no commitment either. It looks like Daphne Sanchez just left the link in the chat as well, so you can access that virtual trade show that way. And that's it for my slides. Thank you for inviting me today. And please, I think they'll distribute my contact information if you have any other questions. Good luck with the green economy.
Hi,
Thank you,
Ellie.
Ellie.
This is John from SBS. You have a couple of questions in the chat just right now. I have one from Claire Mifflin. Is New York City considering a more holistic view of greenhouse gas emissions, such as calculating emissions from food and building materials consumed in the city?
We are. I think there's a lot of challenges in being able to collect the data that's necessary to be able to do that. We don't necessarily control all of it is part of the problem. It's hard to, we're not going to put a sensor on every truck that's coming in and out of New York City, but it is definitely something that's on our minds. And economy-wide decarbonization as part of the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act may help address some of those things as well. I know there's agriculture goals and waste goals associated with that law as well.
Okay, thank you, Ellie. It's exciting to hear about all the policies, the regulations, and programs that are in place to provide for a greener NYC. Next slide. Next, we're going to hear from a few city agencies and NYCHA about some of their upcoming green infrastructure and green energy project opportunities as a result of these regulations. And next slide. First up is Rupesh Joshi, Managing Director of Green Infrastructure, Design and Construction from the New York City Department of Environmental Protection, also known as DEP. Rupesh, please unmute yourself and proceed.
Thank you, Ophelia. You can hear me, right?
A little choppy, so if you could speak a little bit louder.
Okay, and let me just the volume. So my name is Rupesh Joshi. Like Ophelia mentioned, I'm with the New York City Department of Environmental Protection. And let me just briefly discuss the New York City DEP Green Infrastructure Program. On this slide and the next slide specifically, I'm going to talk about the details of why we are doing this program and some details about combined sewer overflows. But I want to start off by following up on what Ellie said, and that installing green infrastructure is basically a win-win for New York City. While I'll go about discussing the primary goal of reducing combined sewer overflows, I want to right at the beginning highlight that there are several co-benefits, such as urban greening and urban heat island reduction, community and environmental benefits to New York residents. And again, there's more habitats for birds and pollinators like bees. Anyway, in 2010, the New York City Green Infrastructure Plan was released. This was a follow-up to the city's Plan YC, which was a blueprint for a greener city. Even though, our harbors, the New York Harbor, had been cleaner than it had ever been for over 180 years because of DEP's investment in our wastewater treatment plants and our sewers, the goal was still to meet the water quality standards to reduce pathogens. And the biggest challenge was to reduce combined sewer overflows. I'll talk about in detail what I mean by combined sewer overflows on the next slide, but basically it means that during certain times of the year, we have rainwater and wastewater, which is just sewage water that mix, and it discharges into the harbor. And this plan was developed to reduce that, basically. And the plan presented an approach to improve the water quality in our harbor by integrating green infrastructure like bioswales and green roofs. And a critical goal, as you see here, is the green infrastructure component was to manage 1 inch of stormwater runoff of 10% of the impervious surface in our combined sewer areas by 2030. And in 2012, the DEP signed an agreement with New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, the DEC, to reduce combined sewer overflows using not just green infrastructure, but a hybrid of green and gray infrastructure. And when I say gray infrastructure, I'm talking about the traditional, the pipes, the sewers, and the storage structures. Next slide, please. The agreement that I talked about is basically being implemented in partnership with numerous city agencies and environmental stakeholders, some of whom you're going to hear about from today, like NYCHA and Department of Parks and Recreation. And they'll talk about the GI program that we're collaborating on. But this one is an important slide to talk about because some people think we're installing GI just to reduce flooding, which is not entirely accurate. As is the case with many of America's, older cities, the majority, 60% of New York City's sewer system is combined. And what I mean by combined is in this type of system, there is a single distribution pipe that carries both stormwater runoff, water that's on the street when it rains, and sanitary sewage from buildings. And this mix of stormwater and sewage is usually sent to a wastewater treatment plant. I say usually because when it rains really heavily, combined sewers receive higher than the normal flows. The treatment plants, they're not able to handle that kind of flow. So when this happens, a mix of stormwater and untreated sewage discharges directly into our harbor. And these events are called combined sewer overflows, or CSOs. And we're concerned about CSOs because of its effect on water quality and the recreational use on the local water bodies. And that's why we're constructing these green infrastructure assets. Next slide, please. So what green infrastructure does is basically it slows down, it absorbs, it filters the stormwater runoffs before it can enter the sewer system. And that basically helps reduce the occurrence of combined sewer overflows and the amount of pollution, basically. And green infrastructure, it's more than just stormwater management. While the primary goal of the program is to reduce CSOs in a cost-effective way, I mentioned, early on that these distributed assets, they provide the community and environmental benefits to the neighborhoods, like increased urban greenery, urban heat reduction. And DEP has constructed thousands of green infrastructure assets across the city, such as rain gardens. So what is a green infrastructure? We actually adopt a broad definition. We include even those that don't actually utilize vegetation, such as porous pavement. We consider those green infrastructure as well. Here on the left-hand side, that's a rain garden, and DEP uses the term rain garden to describe planted areas on the sidewalk that are designed to collect and manage stormwater. Our DEP website, and I can send you the link, also discusses these green infrastructure in detail for those of you who want more information. And here's how it works. When it rains, the rainwater flows down along the street, on the gutter, along the curb, and into the rain garden. The collected stormwater is absorbed by the sandy soil on the top, and there's a stone layer at the bottom, and that seeps into the ground underneath in what's called infiltration. And some of that water will be absorbed by the trees and the plants, and any remaining water will evaporate, after it stops raining. And during a heavy rainstorm, stormwater goes into the rain garden, but some water may eventually go past the inlet and go into the catch basin. On the right-hand side is a different type of rain garden. We call them our type Ds, but basically instead of water going into the inlet, into the rain garden, causing a lot of trash to go in, our new design also has this catch basin, which when it fills up, the water goes through perforated pipes and then into the soil. In the middle, we have a relatively new type of assets called infiltration basins. And these infiltration basins are designed to store rainwater beneath a surface that closely mimics its surroundings, like grass and concrete. Basically the inlet that's there, you can see the inlet, the sump. Once it starts filling up, there's openings on the wall that feed into pipes, which convey the stormwater to the stone layer that's just right next to it. Again, the process is infiltration. Next slide. So here are some photos that you can take a closer look at the green infrastructure assets. There's a rain garden on the left. In the middle, there's infiltration basin. That's the concrete top in the middle. On the upper right corner is our grass top, IBs, infiltration basin. And then down at the bottom right is porous concrete. Also, there's a different type of permeable pavers as well, and they're becoming a viable solution to reduce stormwater runoff. The porous material, basically, they can take in stormwater at a rapid rate, and the rainwater basically gets stored in a porous gravel layer underneath the pavement, and it's allowed to percolate into the underlying soil. Next slide. So what do we do? How do we go about selecting where to put green infrastructure? And also, this is where the consultants and subcontractors like surveyors and drillers and construction contractors, they play a role. And a number of them are MBEs and WBEs. Just to go in a step-by-step process to figure out where to locate GIs, we do a drainage analysis. We look at the maps where catch basins are, where the sewer mains are, and depending upon the entire drainage area, for each catch basin, we determine how many GIs we would need. We then visit the site and we determine where physically the GI can be located based on our siting criteria. And then after that, plans for borings, geotechnical investigations are created. And then we go out to drill. And we have a consultant in most cases, but the sub-consultant and the subcontractors for geotechnical work are in most cases WBEs and MBEs. And in some cases, the consultants and the contractors are directly working for DEP. In many cases, for our projects, we have the DDC, with the Department of Design and Construction, and the EDC, the Economic Development Corporation. They manage our consultants. Anyway, once the results come in, we do a topographical survey, including utility survey. And again, many of the surveys doing this work are MBEs and WBEs. And after the surveys, it's basically putting together contract documents. And it's off to construction after that. The typical work is saw cutting, excavation, installing stones, the perforated pipe, the engineering soil, and there's some concrete work involved. And for our rain gardens, there's landscaping work as well. And our contractors, in many cases, hire subcontractors that are MBEs and WBEs to do all aspects of the construction that I mentioned, and especially the landscaping. Next slide, please. Yeah, on this slide, you can see some before and after pictures. The first set on the left, if you just compare the top and the bottom, and then on the right, the top and bottom. The first set shows the greenery we're providing with our rain gardens. The second set basically shows a stormwater green street, which is basically a big rain garden, but they're actually constructed on the roadway itself. And as you can see, how helpful the GI has been in reducing flooding issues. Next slide, please. So right now we have more than 11,000 right-of-way GI assets that are already constructed or already under construction. And for this slide, I just wanted to discuss projects that we'll be doing design for, which will include surveying and geotechnical work, and will be also, some projects that will be going out to bid and going out to construction in the next few months, certainly within the year. Like on the left-hand side, it's the OH15 area where we're doing design right now. We're going to be doing surveying work and drilling work. And for all that area, we're actually doing porous concrete work. So this one's going to be an area-wide porous concrete area. It's in Brooklyn. In the middle, we have our Coney Island Phase 1, again in Brooklyn. And the project scope here consists of 730 right-of-way green infrastructure assets. Those are going to be, rain gardens and infiltration basins. On the right, still in design in Northeast Queens. We're going to be designing 300 GI assets. Consultants need to finish surveying at this time. Design is hopefully will be over sometime this fall, but that's upcoming work. We'll be going into construction next year. Next slide. Now, in my previous slides, I focused quite a bit on our right-of-way green infrastructure program, but we also have focused on citing green infrastructure on public property. For example, in 2012, when we signed a partnership agreement with the New York City Housing Authority, NYCHA, to cite green infrastructure in publicly owned housing developments. And we have a speaker coming up later who will talk about GI in NYCHA property. There's also ongoing effort to cite GI in public parklands and playgrounds. And we've also joined with DOE and TPL and New York City School Construction Authority to basically renovate schoolyards and put in green infrastructure components. And for these on-site locations, we employ infrastructure options that retain stormwater, which means basically it prevents the water from entering the sewer, or detain stormwater, which it kind of stores it temporarily, but with slow release to the sewer so that you don't exceed the capacity of the treatment plant, the wastewater treatment plant. We're also installing green infrastructure practices in our right-of-way medians, working with DOT on that. And also a large portion of the CSO area is privately owned, and direct support and incentives are incorporated in our GI plan to encourage the use of GI on those properties. So basically, in summary, the GI plan merges natural ecosystems and cutting-edge technology, and also engagement with the local communities, including presentations just like the one I'm doing today, to enhance operations of the city's sewer system, but also to improve the water quality. And New York City, it presents its own challenges because it's a really densely populated city, and because of New York City's age as well. We're an old city, but what we're doing is an example to the rest of the country and to the world in general. And I think my time sort of runs out there, but so that's it from me. So thank you, but I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Rupesh. I was happy to see a rain garden in my neighborhood in Brooklyn. I'm going to keep my eyes open for more. Next slide. Next, we'll hear from Matthew Donham, Director of Natural Resources, Capital Design and Construction, and Nave Strauss, Director of Street Tree Planning from the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation, or DPR. Gentlemen, please unmute yourselves and proceed.
Great. Thanks, Ophelia. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
All right. So I'm Matt Donham. I'm here with Nave Strauss. We at Parks have green infrastructure and green energy priorities, which track really well with Ellie's presentation. We're going to focus today on some of the green stuff, in her words. We're going to focus on our stormwater, green infrastructure projects, and street tree planting. And so we give me the next slide. Okay. Nave, are you with us?
I'm here.
Great.
Can everybody hear me too?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good morning, everybody. This is very exciting for me to be able to attend this. So street tree planting has not historically been the easiest opportunity for M or WBEs to be a part of, but we're actively working on changing that. How, you might ask? Well, in fact, just in the last couple of months, parks procured 12 new solicitations targeted specifically towards MWBEs through the small purchase contract method, which allows the agency to work on, excuse me, to procure purchase orders, even for construction, which even though it's tree planting, it's considered construction for up to $500,000 each. So, you know, great news for us and for the new vendors who are working with us. We're actually able to award these jobs to 7 new vendors who we have not worked with previously, which is extremely exciting. Again, all of these are M or WBEs. And the program intends to continue this momentum by conducting more and more outreach to companies that are qualified to do this type of work. And I'll get into what that means in the next coming slides, but I'll hand it back to Matt really quickly.
Okay, great. Thanks, Nave. So building on that work, we are also developing contracts in this under $500,000 range in our natural resources group. So you might not be aware that parks, in addition to our landscape parks and playgrounds, we have 10,000 acres of forest, 5,000 acres of wetlands, another 5,000 acres of grasslands. And we do restoration work and trail construction work on those properties, and many of those projects wind up being small contracts that we have 4 upcoming that will be MWBE solicitations, and 6, I think now 7 since I made this slide, currently in design. Within our group, we also we collaborate very closely with DEP on stormwater green infrastructure installations like the ones that Rupesh just talked about, very similar on parkland, sometimes in natural areas, sometimes in playgrounds and our landscape parks. And we do both subsurface systems, like the ones he showed, and rain gardens. So a lot of exciting work. In addition to the projects that we scale under 500,000, we have larger projects in our group where lots of subcontracting opportunities are available. So thanks. Back to Nave. Next slide.
Thanks, Matt. We can proceed to the next slide, please. Great. So I'm going to do a really quick overview for those of you watching about what street tree planting involves. But I also just want to be very clear. Even though my title is Director of Street Tree Planting, we also plant trees in our landscape parks. You know, Matt referred to those and to the forested areas. My program does not plant trees in the natural areas, but we do in the constructed, built parks that perhaps you have frequented with your families or by yourself or what have you. But of course, a lot of the bread and butter of what we do is street tree planting, so trees along the public right of way. And even though, so these contracts are interesting because it's not, if you're a landscaper, this is not just go to somebody's front yard and plant a tree in a nice grassy area. This could be saw cutting, jackhammering, and excavation of concrete and construction fill, replacement of topsoil, grinding of stumps, tree removals, and sometimes tree garden installations, which I'll touch on in a minute. And then subsequently, of course, the planting of the tree. And everything that we do on each one of these sites is a means to an end. And the end is planting a tree and then establishing it for 1 or 2 years after planting. And one thing that makes our projects unique versus perhaps other planting opportunities that you might get through other agencies, including my own, say, for example, on capital projects, which we are sort of a part of, but just ever so slightly separated. My program runs contracts with a nursery, or actually, excuse me, with a few different nurseries who we purchase the trees from directly and provide to the contractor who is installing them for free at no cost. And if you were the contractor who's contracted with us, you would charge us based on the planting of that tree without the worry of having to go to a nursery to procure the tree yourself. And that allows us to maximize diversity in addition to any of the other bigger ecological goals that we have. We can move on to the next slide, please. Okay, and I touched on tree guard installation before. So as Matt said, for his projects, many of my projects too are over that $500,000 cap that is specific to MWBE small purchase contracts. But for those of you who might not be landscapers, but perhaps do fencing or ironworks, our projects also allow for some of that as well, because we install tree guards such as the ones that you see here, where, you know, sometimes we have MWBEs who manufacture the tree guards, and sometimes we have MWBEs who manufacture and install the tree guards for our prime landscape contractor who did the tree plantings. So here's a little average number for you on any given contract. And again, it's an average, so it can be above or below that. And then we can move on to one last slide. So just good for you to know, there are tree planting solicitations that are out there on the New York City Parks website under the capital projects page. And any MWBE projects are also solicited directly through Passport if and when we do those again. Excuse me, not if, when we do those again. Our planting contracts range anywhere from $50,000 to $10 million. And some of them are, you know, 1 season long, so say up to 6 months, and others of them are 3.5 years long. So you can see lots of different ranges of scope. It is important to note, because I know that this can sometimes be a challenge for smaller companies, any contract over $1 million in value requires 100% payment and performance bonds. And this is not just specific to tree planting, this is specific to, I think, every city construction project. So please know that. Competitive sealed bids require a bid bond or a bid deposit, whereas the small purchase contracts that we just solicited did not. So that's also important to know. And as I said, any and all MWBE small purchase contracts can be up to $500,000 in value. That's where I'll leave you today, and I'm happy to answer any questions, and I know Matt is as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew and Nave. And Nave, sorry I mispronounced your name earlier.
All good.
And also thank you for mentioning the bonding requirements. Actually, I'll be talking about services that we have available to help construction and trade firms with bonding a little bit later. In the meantime, next slide. We're going to hear now from Jennifer Leone, Chief Sustainability Officer from the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development, also known as HPD. Jennifer, please unmute yourself and proceed.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
All right, good morning. My name is Jen Leone. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer at the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development, HPD. And I will be joined off camera by Marcia Cameron Denton, our Director of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion at HPD, and Nicole Garrett, Deputy Director of Operations. And they will be kind of manning the chat. So if you have questions, pose them in the chat and hopefully you'll get a response. First off, let me start with a description of what we do at HPD, in part because I think it's a little bit of a mystery to some people. We are tasked with advancing the cause of Housing New York. And since 2014, and we were in business long before that, we've built over 57,000 units of new housing and preserved over 120,000 units. And we do that by preserving affordable housing. And that means making sure homes that are affordable now stay affordable in the future. And that could be homes coming to us, buildings coming to us for financing and retrofits and so on. And these preservation projects can range in size. We do very small buildings all the way up to very large buildings. And I'm a little bit going off script to address some of the questions that have come up in the chat, but our projects require services of all kinds. Everything from professional services, contracting, subcontracting, building management, and so on. The other thing we do is develop new affordable housing. And we develop, again, small projects, larger projects, very large projects, of course. And we do that so that we can continue to meet New York City's expanding housing demands and to keep these projects affordable. And our efforts include all kinds of scales, like I mentioned, but also mixed income developments, senior residents, supportive residents, and so on, including home ownership projects. But one thing that's really important is that we're a finance agency. We don't actually build the projects, we finance these projects, and we deal with policies around these projects. Some of the policies and the part I deal with are green infrastructure and energy and all, sustainability policy. Our projects, including all of the hundreds of thousand units under our asset management department, have to comply with the city's local laws. And that includes all of the Climate Mobilization Act laws that Ellie talked about earlier. And also have to address all of the challenges that are coming to New York City, particularly these resiliency issues, which will affect many of our buildings for flooding, precipitation, and heat, of course. One of the laws that we are subject to, and this is for our new construction and substantial rehabs, are subject to comply with green building laws. And in this case, it's either LEED or much more commonly enterprise green communities, which is a very specific set of requirements for affordable housing. It's a national standard. And in New York City, we have our own particular overlay, the New York City overlay of enterprise green communities, to be specific. And I put a few of the key criteria that are embedded in the work up on the screen, just to give a sense of the types of green energy, resiliency, and infrastructural requirements that are embedded in all of our substantial rehabilitation and new construction projects. Again, these are the ones I thought are really most applicable to the audience here, including items like solar, lighting upgrades. We have flood proofing and other green infrastructure components on our properties. We have a new broadband initiative. We have criteria that address landscaping, irrigation, stormwater management, recycling and waste management, and so on. And like I said, our projects sort of holistically touch on all of these different criteria. Our projects that are not substantial rehabs, or moderate rehabs, are buildings that, they're not doing such significant work scopes that they are required to comply with enterprise green, but there's a lot of projects that come to us and they get a full gamut of retrofit work. And our goal is always to attempt to green our buildings, and whether that means energy efficiency work, general building repairs for health and safety, building electrification, that's a little bit challenging still, but something we're working toward, solar, and so on. But like I said, what makes us a little bit unique is that we don't procure projects. Like I said, we're a financing and policy agency, and we work with building owners and developers to do the actual work. Next slide. Thank you. So what does that mean in terms of MWBEs, right? How do we engage? We are committed to promoting MWBE participation in all of our development and management of our projects. And we have, and this is not my area of expertise, but luckily Nicole and Marcia will, be able to help field some of these questions. But we have an MWBE Building Opportunity Initiative to address the disparities and to make sure that all communities are able to participate in the development and preservation of affordable housing. It's really important to us. We have requirements embedded into all of our development scopes that MWBE businesses are, have to be a part of all of our project procurement. And we have a couple of programs specifically, which you can see on the slide. We have our Build Up program, and this actually requires 25% of all project costs to be with certified MWBEs. And this could be providers of any of the services, like the services noted on the earlier slides, and so on. And then we have our Build Out program. And this helps our development partners find qualified providers, again, across the spectrum of the types of providers we need. And then we also have a couple of other initiatives, related to training and scaling, networking opportunities, and so on. And all of this can be found on our MWBE Building Opportunity Initiatives page on the HPD website. And that's something you can easily Google. And a couple things just to call these out, and I should have had better, cooler pictures like some of the guests who preceded me, but I think Ellie mentioned the affordable housing solar mandate. We are bringing solar to projects through our new construction and preservation pipelines, as well as trying to expand solar to the projects that have already been retrofit and built by HPD. And MWBE firms are really well positioned to win businesses through these programs if they become NYSERDA approved solar installers. And that's something we wanted to highlight. We also know that there's a lot of local law 97 compliance requirements that are coming up in 2024. And this is for all of our projects. A lot of affordable housing projects have to meet these prescriptive measures requirements that Ellie laid out. And we see this as a great opportunity for qualified contractors to do these kind of work scopes. A lot of them could be standalone or work with the Con Ed incentive programs and so on. And then just a couple other things is as we scale up things like high performance building technologies like Passive House and start to gear up toward the city's requirements for resiliency, we just see and hope that all of the workforce is starting to take on the education and preparedness to meet these higher goals and to be well situated to help, HPD and all the other agencies get us where we need to go for future projects. I think that's everything that I need to say for today.
Great, thank you, Jen. And hi, Marcia and Nicole. A shout out to your HPD MWBE Build Up and Build Out programs. SBS happily supports those initiatives, and we're always happy to share information about events, workshops related to those programs. So MWBEs, keep an eye out for notifications, emails about those initiatives. Next slide. So lastly but not least, please welcome Adam Benditsky, I hope I said that right, Green Infrastructure Program Manager from the New York City Housing Authority, also known as NYCHA. Adam, please unmute yourself and proceed.
That's perfect. Yeah, Adam Benditsky. I am the Program Manager for Green Infrastructure at NYCHA. And NYCHA, these are some of the folks you see on the slide, some of the things we're focusing on: energy, renewables, water, waste. We've really got a holistic, sustainable approach to moving forward. Next slide. NYCHA was first created in the late 1930s, and it wasn't, people often think of NYCHA as affordable housing, which it is, but it was in the 1930s, it was actually designed to be model housing. It was what was considered the future of all housing. And what it was very innovative and very high tech. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that over the years, that started to fall apart. And it's been some 80 years since then, and it's really time that we really begin to upgrade our systems so that we can provide our residents with the most comfortable, sustainable, and healthy ways of living. Next slide. So we are, as people were talking about, we're focusing on all of the different issues here that everyone was saying. We're doing local law 97, electrification, energy partnerships. We're working with multiple different agencies, other city agencies, state agencies, private companies, in order to upgrade our systems to the best capacity they can be. Next slide. One of those ways is what was called heat pumps, and these are this is something that NYCHA is working on right now in order to help keep apartments at comfortable temperatures. There's been some stuff in the news where there have been issues with NYCHA apartments not being in the right temperature, and that's something that we're really working on to make our residents comfortable, but also to help maintain a sustainable environment. We worked on a pilot at Fort Independence that was really successful in creating heat pumps that kept the apartments at a good temperature with much lower cost. But the process was very expensive, and putting these heat pumps in was not really, it couldn't be scaled. So we're working with NYSERDA right now to come up with a new approach to package heat pumps, and we're looking at all different scenarios that will make it just easier, less labor intensive, an easier way to really scale this up. And the goal is to bring affordable electrification by significantly reducing the installed costs. So the ideal solution would be to repackage the cold climate pumps. Currently, we're working with the R&D and RFP with NYSERDA and NYPA. There's nothing on the ground at the moment, but we are hoping to put something out later this year, and it'll be geared primarily to large manufacturers, but also to late stage startups. So that's what's happening with that, with the heat pumps. Next slide. In addition to heat pumps, we're working with Retrofit New York, which is heat pumps is one part of Retrofit New York. This is a NYSERDA project. Another part is cladding. So you may have seen this on some buildings. We're going to be doing this. We're doing our first pilot cladding at Ravenswood houses. And what that is you actually put it's almost like a koozie for your house or for a building. So it actually insulates it. It keeps the temperatures in, and it reduces the cost of electricity considerably. So that's happening there. This actually did happen at one of the Rad Pact converted sites, Baychester houses in the Northeast Bronx. And so now we're working on this at some of our portfolio sites. So that's something that's exciting that will be happening. Next slide. Okay, EPCs are a really big part of our work at NYCHA. That's energy performance contracts. And this is a really interesting, innovative financing technique that uses cost savings from the reduced energy consumption to repay the cost of the energy conservation measures. The financing allows building users to achieve energy conservation measures. The cost of the energy is borne by the performance contractor and paid back for the energy savings. So it's a little confusing, but it's a really great way of doing upgrades. It uses a single contractor and to do the necessary audits, and the retrofits guarantee energy savings. There's currently, NYCHA has 7 developments in design and will be moving into procurement. That the ESCOs, which is an ESCO is an organization that does the energy upgrades, and they'll be hiring a lot of WBEs to do the installations. And we've done many of these already, and we're continuing to go. So if you want to send me an email, I can put you in touch with the project manager for this, who will put you in touch with the ESCOs, who will be doing the hiring for these projects. And there are many of them coming. Next slide. Solar. This is new and exciting at NYCHA. Our first ones just went in. This is a great program. We're hosting 25 megawatts of solar PV by 2025 is our goal. These projects are currently roof leases for community shared solar. So NYCHA serves solely as the host. It's an amazing project. It generates revenue from NYCHA, which is fantastic for us. And everyone, the city in general, and our residents. We provide job training for green jobs, which is great. One of the big parts of this project is that NYCHA residents are actually being hired to be the installers. So they are we're really getting the residents to work and getting them great jobs. We're getting them trained, and once these jobs are finished at NYCHA, they'll be able to move on to the next job that the company that they get hired with. So it's a long-term green job, which is fantastic. It reduces energy costs for NYCHA, And it also reduces the cost for residents who do pay their bills. Most utilities are included at NYCHA, but some residents do pay. Also, Section 8 tenants and other low-income residents of New York City will also benefit from this. There's 2 solicitations. There's commercial solar, which is larger roofs, and then there's access solar, which is for smaller roofs. 2 projects are currently construction, and there are several more in the pipeline. NYCHA plans to release a solicitation in late 2021 for smaller roofs. Late 21. In all cases, the successful applicants will be part of a team of solar developers, design, construction, subscriber outreach, workforce development. There's a lot that goes into this. So we'll be hiring lots of different contractors to work with this project. The next slide. Green infrastructure. This is the one I work on specifically, and this is actually a joint collaboration between DEP and NYCHA. DEP is really the bronze behind this one at NYCHA, and it's a kind of like the roofs are leased for solar. This and our grounds are leased for stormwater management. We had 4 demonstration projects that went in several years ago. Those are Edenwald, Hope Gardens, and Bronx River. And these are, you can see from the picture on the right, the Rain Garden, this is Hope Gardens. So we're creating really beautiful spaces that are also collecting water. So they become community amenities. They're currently in, we have a maintenance contractor that we're working with to keep these up really nice. And we're actually at Edenwald houses next week are going to be doing a spring replanting, which is really exciting. Bronx River is going to be getting a replanting, and NYCHA is working in order to do community outreach to help create a stewardship program around this so that residents will learn about what this is and also be able to be empowered to help take care of it. Not on a large scale maintenance way, but on a gardening, site amenity, placemaking type way. And Rupesh talked about our porous pavement, subsurface retention. Those are our new projects that are going in the ground. I had seen someone asked about that. The construction, I know that the geotech for our next upcoming phases are currently being done, but I don't believe that the construction teams have been hired yet. Those are still in the planning phases right now. So there will be a lot of opportunity for construction of green infrastructure on NYCHA properties in the coming years. Okay, next slide. Next slide. Perfect. All right, so mattress recycling. This is our waste management, and mattress recycling is a really big thing that NYCHA is doing. There's a tremendous amount. You can imagine NYCHA is home to 600,000 people. It makes it actually larger than the city of Miami. So you could imagine there are a lot of mattresses that get thrown out on a regular basis, which is actually extremely environmentally degraded. And so NYCHA has come up with a really innovative program to have mattress recycling. And it's great. If you look at this picture, you'll see all of the amazing things that can be done with mattress recycling. And so this one has already, our pilot is already completed, but we are looking to expand this. And there will be lots of opportunities for contractors to do the recycling, to do the carding. So those will be, the current contract is out, and that's 3 to 5 years. So in the next 3 to 5 years, we'll be looking for new contractors, and we'll also be expanding the project. Next slide. Cardboard balers is similar. Again, a lot of cardboard. If you ever ordered anything from Amazon, you know you're gonna get a lot of cardboard at your house. And so same is the case with NYCHA, and it just starts to build up and build up and build up, and it becomes really unruly. And so NYCHA's come up with a really innovative approach to baling those. If you think about baling hay, you make it into a smaller packet and it makes it a lot neater, a lot cleaner. And it also makes it a lot more valuable to companies that want to buy that cardboard. So again, this is also a project that's already completed, but we will be creating new ones. So that's something to look into. Okay, next slide. And then finally, this is exciting, complete waste yard upgrades. As I mentioned in the beginning, NYCHA was first created in the late 1930s, and some of these waste yards date back to that long ago. So they're just not really conducive to the way things work now. They're really not meant for recycling. They're not meant for composting. They're not meant for mattresses. So we're completely redesigning them for new aesthetics, new areas, new ways of just keeping it cleaner, more efficient. And so that's something that we're working on. 7 waste yards are currently in redesign right now, and we will be working with new ones. And the last thing I'll just mention is our pneumatic waste system, which is really cool. This is something pneumatics people always think, oh my God, this is so futuristic. But actually, the first ever subway in New York City, first ever attempted subway was a pneumatic system, which was in the turn of the 20th century. And the pneumatic waste system is actually already used at Roosevelt Island in their complex over there. That's a private development, but this is actually exactly as you see in the picture. Rather than having to bring every door-to-door collection or bring everything down or put it in the trash chutes, which have a tendency to be too small, what we will actually be doing a pilot at the Polo Grounds in Harlem to create a pneumatic waste system where residents will actually be able to take their trash and put it in a pneumatic tube, and it'll get sucked underground into an area underground where everything can be kept really clean and neat and organized and put into the new waste yards in a way that's very efficient and clean, keeping the space really sanitary, and as well as helping to get our waste goals, meet our waste goals. So that's just one design build project that's happening at Polo Grounds right now. But again, depending on how it works out, how much it costs, if it's successful, we believe it will be, and we're excited that it will be. So we're excited to start scaling this up to other developments, and there will be a tremendous amount of opportunity for design build once that happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. And thanks to all of our city representatives for sharing information and also their resources, information about their upcoming projects. We so appreciate the information and look forward to hearing more down the road. So this should give you all a sense, a preliminary sense of some of the types of work that you might want to consider pursuing. And just to follow that up, we want to be able to provide some resources to help guide you, to help assist you with making some of those business decisions moving forward. So next slide, we're going to talk about some of the resources available to you to help you prepare, you and your companies, to take on some of these future project opportunities. Just a quick time check. We are kind of heading into the 11:30 hour, and I think we're going to go a little bit over, so I hope you'll all stick with us because I definitely want you to hear from Emily and the state's resources, but I'm going to whiz through SBS's programs and services and then pass them on to Emily. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, so I think most of you are familiar with our free services that are offered through our business solutions centers. But I'll highlight a couple. Our pro bono legal assistance for those of you who might need contract review, agreement review by an attorney. We offer business courses, standalone workshops, online courses to help you with various business topics. And probably the most important thing that you might want to hear about is financing assistance. We can offer loans and lines of credit through various lenders that we work with, and financing assistance specialists at the centers can help kind of package your application and point you in the right direction of a loan product. Additionally, if you need to hire employees, our business solution centers are usually co-located with a workforce center. We can assist with developing job descriptions and rounding up candidates for you to interview if you're looking to hire. And then if you know of anybody interested in certification with the city, we have specialists at the centers that can help those business owners put together their application for certification. Next slide. And I'll quickly go through this capacity building, which is my area at SBS. Bonding was mentioned earlier, and I'd like to just mention our bond readiness cohort program, which is an intensive educational program designed to prepare businesses for applying for a bond. It is a very intensive process, and so this course will walk you through the various things that you need to do to prepare to apply within your business operations as well as your financial documentation. We also offer mentorship through MWBE Mentors, which is an event series designed to connect successful MWBEs doing business with the city with MWBEs who are looking to pursue city contracting. And then I mentioned capital access in the previous slide, but we also offer for city funded projects, capital access through the contract financing loan fund. And that is based on a payment assignment, but allows you to apply for a mobilization loan of up to $1 million annually with a 3% interest rate. And right now there's some eligibility for a 0% interest rate, depending on the applicant. And then technical assistance for those of you looking to do business with the city, and you would want to for some of these projects that have been mentioned. We offer technical assistance, and that's through our vendor services and our Procurement Technical Assistance Center at SBS. It's a series of workshops. It's a number of one-on-one sessions that you can have with our specialists to help you navigate the procurement process of the city. Next slide, please. I'll mention the customized training grant, and that is a grant reimbursement program to help you with training costs that you might incur for your employees, whether it be on equipment or software or methodology, whatever it might be. You can apply for a grant to subsidize the cost, and it's up to $400,000 if you qualify. There are some conditions, and we've linked all of this information on these slides to the website so that you can learn more about them. Next slide. And just want to mention also for construction firms that we offer a construction site safety grant program, also a reimbursement program based on construction site safety training for your employees, the various OSHA training classes that are required by the city. And you can apply for this if you're eligible. There's some criteria listed here, but it's also linked to the webpage where you can find all of the eligibility criteria as well as the application. Next slide. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to Emily Dean, who is the Director of Market Development at the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, also known as NYSERDA, and she's going to talk to you about the state's resources. Emily, please unmute yourself and proceed.
Great. Thank you, Ophelia. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Great. Well, thanks to those who can stick with us for a few more minutes. But if you can't, my slides are not pretty, but they're chock full of information for you to resource after the fact. So, program descriptions, links, and contact information for ways to get involved in NYSERDA's programs and unlock incentives for the customers that you're serving, as well as significant investment the state is making in clean energy, workforce training, and development opportunities. So resource those slides if you can't stay with us. But for those of you who can, thank you. I'm Emily Dean. I oversee NYSERDA's work in building decarbonization across our housing sector, as well as clean energy workforce development and training, and our partnerships with local governments and communities across the state to lead on clean energy and climate action. So for those of you who don't know, New York State, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority is really the main agency focusing on advancing energy efficiency and clean energy resources. We do this through a number of ways, through programs we administer, through support for large-scale renewable development across the state, environmental research, and we also have a central role in helping to implement the state's Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, or the Climate Act, which Ellie Kahn spoke to at the beginning of the program. So I just want to underscore, between the investments and the policy and sort of regulatory environment in New York City and New York State, this is really poised to drive significant investment and job growth in environmental services and decarbonization, and with equity as a focal point. As Ellie mentioned, the Climate Act in New York State has a minimum of 35% of the benefits accruing to disadvantaged communities, with a goal of 40%. So that really means that New York City, as given its the prevalence of environmental justice areas and low-income populations, is poised to receive a significant portion of the state's investments in complying with the Climate Act. And as part of the deliberations that are going on at the Climate Action Council and across the various sectors, we're hearing at all levels that we need to raise up support and access for minority and women-owned business enterprises in the clean energy economy. And you can even see that reflected in the budget that was just adopted, the New York State budget that was just adopted, which included prevailing wage requirements for renewable energy projects. So prevailing wage provision, as well as requirements put on renewable energy developers to contract with minority and women-owned business enterprises, as well as service-disabled veteran-owned business enterprises. And that's really, in my observation, that's really just the start. As part of this process, NYSERDA is looking really closely in terms of how we can further incentivize, require, encourage MWBE participation as part of the programs that we run. So I expect that to evolve and expand in the coming year. Next slide, please. So NYSERDA does a whole bunch of things. I'm not going to cover it all, and I know we have a very diverse audience, so I tried to capture some of it, but we support energy-related studies and services and also upgrades across different building segments, really with a focus on supporting low and moderate income homeowners and affordable housing, but serving the built environment broadly, complementing what the utilities are putting into the market. We have a whole ecosystem around supporting clean energy startups and technology innovation. We're investing heavily in clean energy workforce training, which I'll speak to in a minute. We're supporting clean transportation, including vehicle rebates and build out of the EV charging infrastructure across the state. We support the development of large-scale wind and solar projects, including the offshore wind projects that coming to the downstate area, as well as environmental research analysis in a whole host of areas. So there are over 60 programs that we're running, so I encourage you to check out what might be applicable for your business. And I do want to spotlight that the utilities, so in this area, Con Edison and National Grid are offering programs for residential, multifamily, and commercial customers. So I encourage the companies on the call to also take a look at those programs, because utilities increasingly have the greatest portion of the budget to support incentives for customers. I do want to spotlight that New York State is investing heavily in building electrification through the New York State Clean Heat Program. This is a program run by Con Edison that incentivizes the installation of cold climate air source heat pumps and geothermal systems in buildings. So we are looking for more contractors to participate in that program. So there's a link. And if you're working in the HVAC or plumbing field, that could be a great opportunity. So do check out that opportunity as well. Next slide, please. So just to spotlight a few programs that might be most relevant to this group, just picking out 3 of the 60 plus programs in NYSERDA's portfolio. We do a lot to serve the residential sector, particularly low and moderate income homeowners. So we cover the full cost of an energy audit for any homeowner, regardless of income. And we also provide a 50% cost share on efficiency retrofits for income qualified New Yorkers. So for moderate income and low income New Yorkers through our assisted home performance program. So I note here just some of the qualifications that we look for in terms of technical certifications for energy auditing and home performance work. So if that seems like the right opportunity, do follow the link. And I provided our contact Eric Gilbert, who you can talk to find out if that opportunity is right for you. That we need to significantly grow the number of homes that we serve. Our budgets are growing in this area, and we need to expand the workforce to deliver the solutions for low and moderate income homeowners, to deliver the efficiency benefits and sort of the home health and safety benefits that are made possible through this program. So we're looking for more contractors to come on board. It was mentioned previously, I think Jen Leone mentioned this and others. We run the New York Sun program, which incentivizes solar photovoltaic installations on homes, businesses, as well as pre-development support for solar on affordable housing. So for companies out there that have solar installation experience and have certifications either through NABCEP, UL or IBEW, this could be a great opportunity for you. This is another growth area, helped greatly by the legislation, by the Climate Mobilization Act that Ellie spoke to. So contact information there if that's right for you. And then finally, FlexTech. FlexTech is a program where we cost share energy related analysis and technical assistance for multifamily and commercial buildings. So, and we've already seen a lot of growth as buildings are grappling with how to comply with Local Law 97. What are the things they can plan for and do in line with investments they already plan to make to reduce their carbon footprint over time. And so in any of these programs where we accept contractors on a rolling basis. So if they seem right to you, contact the people noted here and come join the the tremendous amount of work ahead in all of these areas. Next slide, please. So just but quickly but crucially, clean energy workforce training. So in order to meet the state's climate goals, we workforce development and training, and growing our workforce is on the critical path to doing so. We need to upskill and support our current clean energy companies, and we need to introduce new companies. We need to diversify the ownership, including the MWBE participation in the clean energy economy, and we need to expand and diversify the clean energy workforce itself. So to do that, NYSERDA is investing pretty significantly in this area. We have $100 million that we're putting into the market over the next 5 years to support workforce development and training. Much of that is focused on building electrification and efficiency, because that's a major growth area, but it also includes work on solar, battery storage, as well as the emerging offshore wind market. So I've listed here a number of the clean energy training programs that we have available that anyone can participate in, including support for building operations and maintenance staff, as curriculum development support. If you work with a training partner or you run a training center, we can help support you with training equipment, developing new curriculum, hiring new trainers, etc. And we also are focusing heavily on career pathways. We know we need to sort of build and support the next generation of clean energy workers, particularly focused on high efficiency HVAC and electrification solutions. So that's where we're really focused heavily. And in most, if not all of these programs, we really place an emphasis or a requirement on hiring individuals from priority populations. So that the definition of that term is evolving, but what it means today, currently in our solicitations, is low-income individuals, individuals who are justice involved or formerly incarcerated, individuals with disabilities, veterans, Native Americans, and others who we want to make sure are prioritized and given access to the clean energy jobs that are here and coming. And then we're also looking at the disadvantaged community lens, the disadvantaged community kind of requirement in our Climate Act. So what disadvantaged communities means is it's an area that is either determined to be an opportunity zone by virtue of the tax law, or a potential environmental justice area, or a HUD census tract below 50% AMI. So as Ellie mentioned, the disadvantaged community definition does cover a significant portion of New York City, and so residents of New York City really should have a leg up and be prioritized for the job training and placement opportunities coming from this $100 million investment that we're making. So just to spotlight two programs that I think maybe are most immediately helpful for the companies on the call. If you go to the next slide, please. So through our on-the-job training program, NYSERDA is subsidizing the wages for a new hire. So if you're a clean energy business and you're bringing on a new person, we want to help de-risk that upfront cost and help get that new worker to full productivity. So we're looking, really it's any new hire that's working in some capacity on a clean energy or energy efficiency technology, and a company that's similarly working in the clean energy space. So this provides kind of the wage schedule. I did highlight here for registered MWBEs. To clarify, that's New York State registered MWBEs. We are reimbursing 75% of that individual's wage for up to 24 weeks. So, significant wage subsidy provided here, and across the different, technology areas. So it can be a major help in bringing on that new person and subsidizing those first few months, and also getting them access to training. Next slide, please. We also have a clean energy internship program where we're providing for small companies under 100 employees. We are subsidizing 90% of an intern's wage. And this has been a very successful program, and particularly during COVID, we saw a really significant uptake in companies that weren't able to bring on a hire but did bring on interns. And so this has been a great resource, and I encourage you all to take advantage of it. And so I think that's it. The last slide talks about the process, which you can, self-serve look into later. I just want to clarify one last slide in terms of New York State and New York City MWBE certification. So they are separate programs. So any New York City MWBE firm would have to be New York State certified to participate in the renewable energy provisions that I just talked about that were part of the current New York State budget. And currently through our on-the-job training program, it does require a New York State certification. If a New York City firm, if any firm applies, we can help expedite that, but there's no guarantee that we can really dramatically shrink that time frame. But I will say that we are looking into the flexibility that we as NYSERDA have to look at how we can make it easier particularly for New York City MWBEs to participate in our programs in lieu of or while going through the certification process. So stay tuned for that, because we are going to lean into any flexibility we have to engage with the companies that have been certified by New York City and give them the same benefits that we're allowing for New York State MWBEs through our clean energy workforce training. So more to come on that, and here's a link for finding out more about registering with New York State. So thanks everyone for your time. Sorry that was a lightning round, but feel free to follow up with me or with the people on the slides to learn more.
Great. Thank you so much, Emily. And sorry that you felt you had to rush, but we do appreciate you getting through your slides. It's all very important information. So that really concludes the informational portion of our event. There's a lot of information to digest. We did have some questions in the chat, but I want to be very conscious of our speakers' time. So I think I'm just going to ask one question because I see an interesting one, and I don't know who can answer this, but there was a question posed. Concrete causes about 8% of global CO2 emissions. Have any alternative materials been considered for these construction projects? It's a pretty big question. Is there any of the panel speakers able to answer that or would want to answer that? Feel free to unmute yourself and check
It
in.
might have been to me. This is Rupesh for the green infrastructure. I think that's when the question came. I did mention that we were going to be using porous concrete as one of, that is considered a green infrastructure. We've tried, and most of our green infrastructure that we've installed have been our rain gardens. So again, that's helped with the climate change. And now we've had to try different assets. With rain gardens, there is a difficulty in siting them. You've got to be a certain distance away from hydrants. You can't put it in certain areas. And then there's also like homeowners. Some of them don't want them. And, even though there are certain categories for opting out, even though someone doesn't want them, doesn't mean you won't get them. But one of the reasons for us doing porous concrete is we're going to be putting porous concrete on the parking lane. So we're actually going to be putting them on the road itself as opposed to the sidewalk. And what that does is on the sidewalk, Department of Parks can put their tree pits. So we're actually doing both, in terms of greenery and climate change. Parks is putting the trees. In terms of DEP's consent order to reduce the CSO, the combined sewer, the porous concrete is helping out. And you would have had asphalt there anyway. We're just putting the porous concrete on the road itself. So that should help with at least a portion of the question that the gentleman lady asked.
Great. Thanks, Rupesh. So we are getting close to timeout, so I would like to hold off on any of the other questions. There were only a couple. Thank you to all of the SBS folks and agency folks who were answering questions in the chat. I think most of those questions got answered. Thank you to all of you for hanging in there. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is just the start of things to come with regard to a greener NYC. We expect to hold additional events and certainly make you aware of upcoming projects. So keep your eyes open for these email notifications, our MWBE newsletter. And please feel free to reach out to us here at SBS and NYSERDA for more guidance with regards to resources. We'll be sending out a copy of the presentation so that you'll have access to the live links shown throughout the deck and resources. Next slide. Shown here on this last couple of slides. And then we're also going to include contact information. So we'll amend the deck before we send it out, but you'll have that available to refer back to. And we encourage you to keep in touch, take this information and make some decisions about how you want to move forward to take advantage of these opportunities. There's so many resources available that will help you gear up to take these on, and we hope you'll contact us for that assistance. So this concludes our event. Thank you so much for attending. We hope that this event and information has inspired you to action in order to prep for these upcoming opportunities. And we've got our contact information here. So we'll send that out. And that's it. Thank you to all of our speakers, Ellie, Jen, Matthew, Nave, Rupesh, Emily, and Adam. And be safe, take care, and have a great rest of the day. Thanks to the SBS folks, Anthony, who is forwarding our slides, John and Christine, who are answering in the chat room. We really appreciate your attendance today. Thank you and take care.